former President Donald Trump's media company, Trump Media, is under investigation for something else. Possible money laundering. Interesting. Now, on Wednesday, The Guardian reported that the company, who is the parent company of Truth Social and owns it.
Truth Central.
Now, that company has, again, already been under a federal investigation since last year, but is now being probed as to whether or not it had done criminal money laundering. That's right. They're looking at whether the company violated money laundering statutes in connection with the acceptance of $8 million in wire transfers that were a little suspicious. So now look, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know. There's not a lot of information here, but I'm going to give you what I have. But I also will approach this with a slight amount of skepticism, and you're going to see why. Okay. So now, this money that was wired to the company, according to records, has some very loose suspected Russian ties. So that right there is kind of what makes me a little like, okay, we got a Russia story. We got Russian funding of True Social, potentially. Now, when you look at the details, it seems to be a loose affiliation, but let's get into the details, okay? So now, as I mentioned before, this is an expansion of an ongoing investigation. There has been no definitive conclusion. Wow, what a weirdo slip. So here are the details. This is from investigations reporter Hugo Lowell, writing for The Guardian. Towards the end of last year, prosecutors started examining two loans totaling $8 million wired to Trump Media through the Caribbean islands from two obscure entities that both appeared to be controlled in part by the relation of an ally to Russian President Vladimir Putin. So it feels like it's the cousin's friend's friend that controls this company that loaned money. So that's where, again, I get a little skeptical. But what I'm not skeptical about is the fact that they received money from a very dubious source. And so we'll get to the details on that. So now, the first $2 million payment to Trump Media came in December of 2021, when the company was on the brink of collapse after a planned merger with DWAC, the blank check company, which would have unlocked millions of dollars for the social media company, was delayed when the SEC had opened an inquiry into whether the arrangement had broken regulatory rules. Okay, so now I had talked about that before. We're not going to get into the details on that again. DWAC's chief executive, Patrick Orlando, had sourced this $2 million loan wired from something called Paxum Bank, which is registered in Dominica. This is according to wire transfer receipts reviewed by The Guardian. So yes, this loan happened. This was money that had been wired through the Caribbean offshore banks, and we don't necessarily know exactly the sources because it seems really muddled, right? And that's where I think, oh yeah, this could absolutely be an issue where there's money laundering. Now, whether or not it connects to like Vladimir Putin trying to single-handedly, float Truth Social for some reason, that I'm not necessarily sold on. I would have to see actually more evidence on that front. Nonetheless, this does seem weird. This does seem suspicious. And I'm not the only one who thinks so. And it's not left-wing progressive press or, anything like that. No, it was people at Truth Social. So we'll get to that in a minute. Now, Paxum Bank, this is where it came from. The wire transfer identified them as the beneficial owner, although the promissory note identified an entity called ES Family Trust as the lender. 2 months later, An unexpected second $6 million payment arrived in Trump Media's account from ES Family Trust, according to the transfer receipt. Oh, now that's weird. That's very interesting. Why is this random company, these two random companies in the Caribbean sending True Social a bunch of money? Now, obviously, there's got to be some sort of, in my opinion, right? And I don't have anything to back this up, right? But I would think, in my opinion, this has got to be some person that really wants True Social to succeed, going through and doing this, overseas weirdo back, channel secret loans to get past the SEC investigation. Because that SEC investigation had locked up all of that potential money that True Social was going to get. Now, I said before, True Social is also a pump and dump scheme. So, a way to get investors to invest in this company, and then when it fails, bail before it fails, essentially. But this company never got its funding. It never really even got off the ground. And so somehow... I was wondering too, how is this company still in business when they, aren't making any revenue? They're not really showing that high quality of ads. There are some ads on there, but they're very, very low quality ads. Things for gold prepper supplies. Not really enough revenue to keep that company going. Because and again, it's not just like a shot at oh, Devin Nunes can't run a business. You suck. Does Devin Nunes suck? Oh, yeah. In my opinion, absolutely. But at the same time, I do have to note that it's very difficult to run a social media company. Even worse, when you're an idiot, just look at Elon Musk. I mean, he's a great example of that. So, I don't know. Is this, again, some conservative sugar daddy coming in, trying to backhand, through the SEC blockage in order to get this, True Social going? I don't know. Again, we just don't have the details on that. But let's get to the Russian angle, okay? And so this is, again, where I'm a little bit I don't know. In both instances of the wire transfers, Orlando did not provide details about the identity of the lenders or the origin of the money to Trump Media executives. Trump Media's since ousted co-founder, however, turned whistleblower, Will Wilkerson. Again, this is somebody that I don't necessarily know. I don't know if I can trust him, but at the same time, here's what he had to say in an interview, and I would really like to see something more substantial than just giving an interview, perhaps a deposition under oath. And I don't know if he had ever given one of those, but okay. Where would he have the chance? I don't think any of this has actually gone to court yet. Or SEC investigators, I don't know if they have spoken to Wilkerson. Nonetheless, more details. Though the two payments to Trump Media essentially came from two separate entities, first Paxson Bank and second ES Family Trust, the trustee of ES Family Trust, a person named Angel Pacheco, appears to have simultaneously been a director of Paxson Bank. Okay, so this is weird. So now you can just forget the name of that person because nowhere else does that name pop up. That's weird. That's very strange. But apparently that alleged person that I cannot prove exists or not allegedly runs both of those. And both of those happen to give money to True Social. Now, the Russians are related because there is a part owner of Paxson Bank named Anton Postolnikov, and apparently he is related to an ally of Vladimir Putin named Alexander Smirnov. Now, Smirnov runs a company, Rosmoport, for the government, and worked before in the central office of the Russian government until 2017. Before that, he was the first deputy minister of justice of Russia until 2014. And for most of Putin's 2 terms as president, Smirnov served in the executive office of the president. So, okay, Smirnov, great. Definitely very, very close to Vladimir Putin. The only thing that Postelnikov, the relation here is the fact that, well, I'm really, he's I don't know, I think he's my cousin or something. Okay, cousin of a person that, yes, is very close in Putin's inner circle, who happens to be a co-owner of a bank that gave to Truth Social. I'm not saying that there's no, relation here. I'm not saying that it's not possible. It is weird. And it might end up being more than a coincidence, but I also can't say that it's not just a coincidence. I don't know. But there is a relation. And look, some people, at least one person at Truth Social, or I'm sorry, at Trump Media, looked at this and was like, this money coming in, and was like, oh, that's weird. In the spring of 2022, Trump Media's then chief financial officer, Philip Wuhan, no, not Wuhan, definitely not. You think Trump Media would hire somebody named Wuhan? No, of course not. We're going to go with Wuhan, since it's a J. Wade returning the money, according to Wilkerson. But the money ended up never being returned, said Wilkerson, in part because losing that $8 million out of the roughly $12 million in cash that Trump Media had in its accounts at the time would have placed significant stress on its financial situation, and that's because Truth Social wasn't, and probably still isn't, making money, and they did not have access to their accounts. Okay. So, now, here's the thing. We have records of some of the people who had known about these infusions of cash and were okay with it. One of them happens to be Donald Trump Jr., who had joined the board with Trump ally Kash Patel and former Republican turned Trump media chief executive Devin Nunes. Apparently, they had confirmed to the company's lawyers to proceed with this transaction, again, because they needed the money. So, Now, look, I can understand them being in dire straits, taking money, but at the same time, like, oh, this strange bank out of the Caribbean, foreign bank funneling money into Truth Social when we need it most. Nope, nothing wrong with that. Doesn't seem fishy at all. Send it in. Yeah, money. Now that's weird, and it does seem like it's some sort of a very big possibility that this is indeed money laundering and is illegal. Again, I still don't know, though, with certainty that this was Vladimir Putin's doing specifically. I can't go and make that leap. And it seems like the people that are reporting in this absolutely want to make that leap. So again, I don't know. And I'm going to be very honest with you about this. And I'm very careful to jump into Russia hysteria. So again, I'm trying to be very careful about this. Now that said, prosecutors, according to the report, appear to have taken special interest in the payments because the offshore Paxton Bank also has a history of providing banking services for the sex industry. So let me be clear. I'm pro-sex industry. I'm just pro-sex in general, okay? Pro-sex industry, the reason that they do have to turn to these banks is because there are a lot of banks in this country that discriminate against the sex industry. And the fact that there is, that for some reason, we have made consensual transactions between two adults when it involves sex illegal, and I think that's the dumbest thing imaginable. Why would we do something like that? It does end up driving it underground and actually ends up hurting sex workers. Nonetheless, prosecutors looking at that and say, oh, that looks to be some rather illegal, again, under our laws, true illegal transactions. So, But that's under our laws, not under Caribbean laws. So now they say that because they do banking services for the pornography industry and sex worker industry, it makes it a higher risk engaging in money laundering and other illicit financing. And I can understand the logic. Yeah, I mean, if you're doing it for one, again, under US law for stupid reasons, illegal thing, then why not do it for other illegal things, especially if you're not in US jurisdiction? So I get it. Now, Orlando himself might be in a little bit of extra special trouble. What do I mean? Well, Orlando had arranged the $8 million in financing. Now, he happens to also have been an SEC licensed broker dealer and would be subject to SEC rules governing anti-money laundering and know your customer requirements, which in this case, we don't necessarily know the requirements. Who is that Angel Chaco person? We don't know who happens to run both of these banks. Yeah. It doesn't seem like he really knew who that customer was. I don't even know if that person actually exists. And again, these large amounts of money just at the time that True Social needs it the most seems rather convenient here. Anyway, those requirements mandate due diligence of investors to combat the proliferation of illicit money. Now, getting back to Trump here, is there a direct relationship to Trump here? Not necessarily, even though Trump runs the company, but again, knowing how lazy Trump is, and because of his laziness, that might actually protect him, because if you're super, super lazy like this guy and don't interfere in the day-to-day operations of these companies, in this case, Trump Media, which he technically ran or owned, you might not be involved in these decisions, and you might actually not know anything about it. But then also, he might know something about it. And so, again, we don't know the details. That's why there's an investigation. It is really interesting, though. Now, as a private company arranging private loans, the obligations for Trump Media to vet the financing under the SEC rules are less clear. So that, again, could also help him. That said, not only that, but the securities regulations are separate to the U.S. criminal money laundering statutes, which do apply universally. So if there is indeed evidence of money laundering, well, then that would be subject to U.S. criminal, not just U.S., but criminal penalties. So that is interesting. Now, Wilkerson, and again, I don't know, he hasn't, as far as I know, he hasn't testified this under oath, but he does say that Trump was interested in the deal personally because he got to own 90% of the shares without putting any money into the company, according to a source familiar with the matter. However, Trump invested some money into DWAC, which could allow him to cash out twice in the event that that merger had been consummated. So look, do I think that Donald Trump would just take money without knowing the source? Of course. It's Donald Trump. Somebody hands him money, he's not going to care where it comes from. He's not going to care if it's legal. He's not going to ask, certainly. But he also is stupid enough not to know. So that's definitely a possibility, and actually might work in his advantage if he ends up being the subject of this criminal, investigation, which has so far not looked at him personally, but has been looking at the company itself. Look, there's a lot of weird coincidences, possibly not coincidences in this story, but for sure, there was money that had come into True Social, and that money happened to be very, very suspicious. And so there's good there's good reason to run this investigation. So I say, keep going with it, and we'll find out what we find out. Even without the alleged Russian connection, which again would really just be more like political, like feeding into, you see, he is a Putin puppet. That doesn't even have to be the truth for this to be pretty bad for Trump and Truth Social.